Everyone, we have to apologize. We're having some technical difficulties with GoToMeeting. We finally got it resolved with them, and we're very happy to welcome you to our seminar on the DJI line of enterprise drones. We're sorry it took a little bit longer to get to you, but we're glad so many of you took a little bit of time out of your day to join us. My name is Greg King, and I'm one of our enterprise account managers here, and I'm joined by Ryan Carter.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for being patient with us.
Ryan covers the Western United States, and I cover the Eastern United States in public safety and in inspection industries. And a little something before about Multi-Copter Warehouse before we get going. We were founded in 2014. We're based out of the Denver, Colorado area, and we're an enterprise level distributor for both DJI and Autel Robotics, as well as Teledyne FLIR. And we have a couple different divisions: public safety and inspection, which Ryan and I head up, and we also have a division for the mapping and surveying industries. And we're also one of the few authorized DJI service centers in the country. And if you are in the Colorado area, please come in and see us. We have a consumer and enterprise showroom, and we also have a very large flight cage where we demo our drones for people. So come in and join us.
And we did just move locations, so we're out here in Denver. So definitely come check out the new spot if you haven't done so already. But yeah, without further ado, let's kind of jump into it. So the webinar today is going over the DJI enterprise line of drones for public safety and inspection. So this is going to include the Matrice 300 RTK, which was released in May of 2020. And then we'll have the M30 and M30T, which was released earlier this year, as well as the M3E and T, which was the most recent system that came out. So starting with kind of the top of the line here, the M300 being kind of the king of the DJI enterprise line. This one is going to be the most customizable drone that DJI has for pretty much every industry that would be using drones. So kind of the basic specs on it are the 55-minute flight time. It has a IP rating of 45, which means it can handle some rain and snow, but you just definitely don't want to have it out when it is a full-on downpour. But in terms of most, weather conditions, it's going to be able to handle, most sprinkle or a light rain, light snow. And then it's going to offer the multiple pilot modes. The different pilot modes are going to be, you can have a gimbal operator and an aircraft operator with 2 remotes. You can do a passover mode, which is going to be one of the more popular options with the multiple pilot modes, where if you were doing a large scale inspection or a large scale search and rescue operation where you would need to push the drone beyond visual line of sight, then you can set up a pilot to take over and resume operations where they would have it within their visual line of sight, so you can cover a larger area. And then the last one being coach mode, so you can kind of teach new pilots and show them the do's and don'ts of operating. So it will be equipped with the full 360 obstacle avoidance with IR and visible sensors in each direction. And then the CSM radar, which is only available with this M300, is a fantastic accessory that you mount on top that would be able to detect centimeter level obstacles such as power lines, tree branches, anything that's hard for the visible and IR sensors to pick up on. It would do a great job of doing so. So this aircraft is sold by itself with no camera. You do have the FPV camera mounted on there, but you would then be looking at one of the payload options, which one of the more popular ones for public safety and inspection is going to be the H20 series. So the H20 series, there's 3 different models. There's the H20, H20T, and H20N. The H20 will just have the 23 times optical zoom, the wide angle camera, and the laser rangefinder. When you get into the T and N, it adds thermal capabilities. So with the T, you'll have the single thermal camera at a more wide focal length, where it's a 645/12, and it would be able to have a custom temperature range. You'd be able to do spot measurements, pretty much everything that you see with the standard thermal cameras these days. With the H20N, it does add an additional thermal camera with an 8x zoom from the wide camera. So it just gives you a little bit more flexibility on being able to stay further away and get more accurate readings and higher resolution thermal. The H20N is also equipped with low light or starlight sensors. So the daytime use of it is not going to be quite as good as we see with the H20 and H20T, but when used in a nighttime setting, it really enhances the visible camera's ability to pick up on subjects when there is little to no light shining on them. One of the other thermal options for this system is going to be the FLIR TZ20R. Now, this thermal camera is probably the best option we have for just thermal on this system. Since it has the two thermal cameras on there, it's a FLIR boson camera. You're able to use FLIR tools with it. So we highly recommend this payload when you accompany it with the H20 camera. It's actually a little bit cheaper than an H20T and giving you better overall thermal and zoom capabilities. The Zenmuse P1 camera is sold with the 35mm lens, and you're going to get it's a full frame 45 megapixel sensor used for photogrammetry. So this is definitely one of the best options for high resolution photogrammetry on a drone. You have the global mechanical shutter, and then it does have the smart oblique and time sync that's built into this payload, where you can really utilize each flight to be able to capture different types of data sets and wouldn't have to run multiple missions to acquire that data. The L1 is going to be DJI's LiDAR option. So that it also has a visible camera on that payload where you would be able to colorize your LiDAR point clouds, as well as just run straight photogrammetry missions if you would like to. Now, for the H20 series, they do have some smart features built in for the payload itself. So one of those features is going to be pinpoint, and we'll talk a little bit about this with the M30 and M30T as well. But with the pinpoint, since it has a rangefinder on the payload, you're able to actually use the camera to find your subject, and then the rangefinder, you'll have a crosshair where you can actually mark that point and get the coordinate information from each pinpoint that you drop. So in a public safety setting, where if you were doing a search and rescue and you did locate a subject, then you'd be able to drop a pinpoint, get that those coordinates to teams on the ground so they can make their way out and do the rescue. For an inspection setting, you would be able to mark faults or any sort of area of interest that you would want to go out and actually check after the fact. So really nice feature to be able to just kind of make notes and drop pins around the area that you're inspecting or that you're searching. One of the other features that this camera will offer is the Smart Track. This is one that a lot of you love to see and use, and it's going to be basically a active track on steroids, where since these cameras have such powerful optical zoom capabilities, they don't actually need to fly autonomously and follow them. They will just use the camera and zoom or the gimbal and zoom capabilities to follow that subject stationary in the air. So you definitely would want to put the aircraft in an area that is able to kind of follow, a car, person, bike, whatever, through the terrain and the other obstacles that are around. Now, what you can also do is you would be able to manually operate the aircraft while it's in the track mode. So you'd be able to kind of assist it in keeping that subject locked in. It does have the predictive tracking, so if it does drop behind a tree, building, obstacle of some sort, it will try and catch it when it comes out. Now, it's not perfect, but it is very impressive and works very well. And then the AI spot check. So for inspection or routine flights where you'd want to, check in on different areas, then the AI spot check is a great feature that really takes waypoints to the next level. So typically use it in an inspection setting where if you wanted to go check out a tower in a certain, section of that tower, then your first flight, you would basically fly to each point, set up your frame to be zoomed in however much you need. And then once you snap that photo, then you would continue to the next spot, point 2, point 3, point 4, and when you come back to land, you'd be able to highlight exactly what it is that you're trying to find. So when it does execute those missions going forward, then it would be able to find that area of interest a lot easier, and the accurate or the reliability of getting consistent photos from each flight are incredible. So
And it will adjust the gimbal and the zoom back to exactly the way it was for that particular shot. So it's not something that you have to keep a gimbal at a particular position for the whole flight. You can be changing that when you're setting it up.
And one thing that you probably would want to utilize with this feature is the RTK base station. You're able to run this without the base station, although we have found when you do have a base station connected, the accuracy is a whole lot better, especially when you are pushing that zoom in quite a bit. It's a little harder for it to find that exact spot without RTK connectivity. So that's just something to consider.
Well, now that Ryan's kind of given us a baseline with the M300, let's talk about the M30 and what it does that the M300 doesn't, and vice versa. It's a little bit a different type of drone. It's more rapidly deployable than the M300, where you have to put the landing gear on the M300 when you take it out of the case. This one unfolds like some of the smaller drones, so you're able to get it up in the air a few minutes sooner. And then unlike the M300 with its removable payloads, this one's fixed. However, it is quite a payload. It does have the laser finder, the wide angle thermal, the wide angle RGB, and the zoom. So it's a payload that's very similar to the H20T. And then you can put other payloads on it. The only one out right now is a speaker spotlight that'll sit on top of it. So you can put some accessories on it. And then the flight time is similar to the 300. All of these three drones are about the same flight time. By the time you look at the M300 with a payload, it's about 43, and this one's 41. So they're similar there. But one place that this really excels, and Ryan was talking about a light rain or light snow on the M300. This one has a lot higher IP rating. So this one's IP55. So this can be out in a major rain. It's rated for as long as 10 minutes, but depending on how hard it would be raining, you'd be able to stay out quite a bit longer. And then it does have the multiple pilot modes, like the 300 that Ryan went over. And then one of the biggest things for this particular drone over the M3 and also the M300 is the remote control plus. So this remote control is a 7-inch screen, so it's a lot bigger than the other two remote controls. And it also is the brightest one. It's 1200 nit compared to 1000 nit on the other controllers. And what's also nice about this one, it has soft buttons on it. There's 3 buttons on each side, and they'll do different things depending on what mode you're in and which lens you're using. It also has 3 roller gears so that you have complete control of the gimbal plus a 3rd roller to be able to zoom in. And then the FPV camera is a little bit different also. This one, it's not using starlight sensors like the H20N payload for the M300, but it is a lot lower light camera than the FPV camera that's on the M300. So if you are out and things get dark and you really don't have enough light for the main camera, you would be able to fly home in very, very low light using the FPV camera. And then the zoom, you'll see a comparison between all these ones as far as their optics, but it's not quite as far reaching as far as the optical. It's 16 instead of 32, but it still has the same 200 hybrid zoom. And then it's got the wide angle, the same thermal cameras in all three drones. And then this one also has the laser rangefinder at the same distances as the M300. And the only difference between the M30 and the M32T is the thermal. There's no difference in the drone at all. And then it has similar smart features. It has the smart track. Of course, you can do your mission planning. It has the same pinpoint that Ryan was talking about for search and rescue and for finding fugitives, that kind of thing. And it's compatible with Flight Hub, their new service. And you can do the same dual operating roles. And then one thing that we're going to do a separate webinar on when it's appropriate is with the DJI dock. So that's a dock that makes this drone autonomous. It's not out yet, and there's very few people that have waivers. So we're going to kind of put that off for a while. But one important thing to realize about the dock is that you can't buy an existing M30 or M30T and then buy the dock whenever things loosen up. It is a special M30, so you do have to buy the two pieces together. It comes together as a kit. And then this is the newest drone that was just introduced a couple months ago, or about a month ago, that replaces the Mavic 2 Enterprise Advanced. So this is the new M3E and M3T. And there's quite a bit of difference between these two drones instead of just the thermal. So the M3E uses the largest sensor of any DJI product. It has a 4/3 sensor.
Well, biggest of a foldable, other than the P1, it'll be the biggest for a transportable, but yes.
Yeah, sorry. It has a 4/3 sensor, and then the biggest thing about the E, besides having that big sensor and more megapixels, it also has a mechanical shutter. So this drone with the RTK adapter is a great mapping drone, the M3E, and whether you're doing 3D mapping or if you're just mapping a crime scene, this would be an excellent. And then the M3T has a smaller RGB sensor, but it has the thermal. And then the zoom, you have an 8x, whereas the M30 has the 16 and 32 on the M300, the same size thermal. And then the RTK module on this particular drone, it will work with the DRTK base station.
And that RTK module is something that is sold separately. So with the M30 and M300, it is built in. So it's not something you have to add on. But with the M3E, it would be mounted onto the top, which would be an additional add-on. That is compatible with both M3E and M3T, but typically you will utilize that with the M3E. And
then you can get a speaker. So these units, as opposed to the consumer M3, will take accessories on top, like the RTK. And then they make a speaker that'll go on top. And then the other thing they did to where they made it where people don't have to choose between like a speaker and a beacon for flying at night is both these drones have a beacon on the tail that's built into the drone. So you don't have to use or you put another payload to put a beacon on.
And they made it, the SDK was released, the software development kit. So it is able to integrate into third-party apps such as DroneSense, such as Drone Deploy, stuff like that. So if you don't like using the Pilot 2 app to running your missions, you are able to use those apps through this RC Pro Enterprise controller.
And this controller also is an enterprise controller. So this one only works with these two drones. You can't use it with any of the other. You can't use it with the M300 or the M30. This one you start losing more of the smart features, and the pinpoint that it does have is a little different than the pinpoint on the M30 and the M300. On the M30 and M300, like Ryan mentioned, you can actually be on an angle and have the camera on people, and when you put the laser finder on them, it's giving the location of the people, not of the drone. So with this pinpoint, since there's no laser on it, if you're trying to highlight somebody and get a coordinate, you'd want to fly directly above them and put the camera straight down as much as you can, and then you'd have an accurate position And then it's also compatible with the Flight Hub 2.
And so kind of looking at the differences here between the three options or the three different systems here, you can kind of see a comparison between the different cameras, between the, if it has a rangefinder and the weather rating here. But yeah, basically what we see here is that they each kind of are in their own category. We get asked a lot, why would I want a M300 with H20 when I can just get an M3T? And I mean, you're getting what you pay for. You can utilize a lot of the same features and get a lot of the same data from each of these, but in terms of the depth of how much you can get will really differ between these two. And here's kind of a good example of we wanted to maximize the different zoom ranges on each of these systems. So we flew pretty much as far as we could while being able to fill the frame with our subject. And as we can kind of see in these three different photos and the distances that they were taken from, with the M300 with H20, you can be nearly a mile away and actually still be able to keep an eye on a subject. Whereas with the M3E and M3T, you're going to have to be a little bit closer. I mean, still a good distance away where you wouldn't be bringing attention to yourself. But it just kind of highlights how much would really cover and keep an eye on with each of these payloads. So
and this would affect the smart track, how far you could actually use that to keep have your subject still in the frame.
Yeah. And then talking about a little bit about flight performance. So as Greg mentioned, the three systems here pretty much have this around the same flight time. Now that max flight time of the M300 is going to be with no payload. When you do add the single H20 camera on there, it drops it down to around the 43, 45-minute range. Now we're in Colorado, so we're a mile high, so we lose a little bit of that just being at a higher altitude. But yeah, pretty consistent across the board. And then you see they all have the 360 obstacle avoidance. And then really the main differences between the M300 and M30 compared to the smaller system of the M3E is you do lose a lot of those smart features, such as the multiple pilot modes, such as the smart track, such as the AI spot check. So it does have waypoints, and you're able to kind of do a AI spot check light with that, basically. But they're going to be a lot quicker deploying with the M3E and M3T than you would see with the bigger systems. So they kind of will each have their own advantages and disadvantages to them.
Now for redeploying, once you've already flown and you need to change your batteries, the M300 and the M30, they do have hot swappable batteries. So they have two batteries, and you would land, you would take one battery out, replace it, then you would take out the other battery and replace it, and then you're back up in the air, as opposed to the M3E and M3T, where you have to turn off the drone, replace the battery, turn the drone back on, and get your satellites back.
Yep. And then just kind of highlighting those smart features that we have been talking about. So yeah, the smart track pinpoint the smart track is only available with the M300 and M30. Now the pinpoint is available with all three, but as Greg mentioned, with the M3E and M3T series, it does not have a rangefinder where you'd be able to point at a subject and mark it. You would need to go directly above it to mark that point. And then the AI spot check is another one. Now, I actually forgot to add the AI spot check for the M30 and M30T. It does have that feature as well. And then the flight or the mission and route planning for mapping or waypoints or the linear style mission flight are going to be available on all three through the DJI Pilot 2 app. And now these different controllers, they each actually have a different remote to them. So the Enterprise Smart Controller is going to be the remote that's dedicated for the M300. So that will have the internal battery and external option, which if you utilize both, you have around a 4.5 hour runtime. You see the operating temperature right there, as well as the brightness and size. Now, one thing to note is with that RC Plus, it is going to have a higher IP rating. It's going to be a brighter and bigger screen, and it has a higher operating temperature. This remote, we have been told, will be compatible with the M300 in the future. I personally have expected it to be, to have it done already, but we have not seen that update come quite yet. So,
and this particular controller also will take a 4G dongle inside to be able to make it have cellular.
Yep. And you can actually do the same with the Enterprise Smart Remote. They both have sections where you'd be able to enable a dongle for internet access. Now, we don't see that on the DJI RC Pro Enterprise, where you would need to connect to a Wi-Fi or a hotspot of some sort to be able to utilize streaming capabilities. But it's going to have a very similar specs as the Enterprise Smart Controller, without the fact that you can put the external battery on there, and there's no spot for a dongle. So pretty solid remotes across the board. I mean, they having all have built-in screens. They will all have output options for HDMI out or USB out to a phone, tablet, if you wanted to be able to have a secondary screen. And then they all will have DJI Pilot 2 built in as the standard default application. And I think we've reached essentially the end here. Kind of ran through it. If you guys have any questions, you can feel free to throw them in our question box here. So we're being asked here the wind resistance for the M300, and I can't remember if I have that.
I don't think that you had that listed.
I don't think I did either. So the wind resistance for the M300, I want to say it's right around 35, 40 miles per hour. Let me just double check on it for you real quick. So it'll be 35 miles per hour max wind resistance. Now, they're going to be a little conservative with their numbers there. We've definitely tested this a little bit more than in higher winds than that, but 35 is what they're saying. I probably wouldn't push it over 45 for sure. 40 would probably be where I'd draw the line. Does the M300 have capabilities for third-party apps like Drone Deploy? As of right now, they do not. Now, you're able to run, a lot of the apps will allow you to mission plan through, Drone Deploy or Pix4D and export the KML, KMZ file to import into the remote and run through the Pilot 2. I know a lot of our customers will do that workflow to kind of keep it consistent in the mission planning side. But as of right now, no, they do not have the abilities to run the third-party apps in the M300. This presentation will be available online. We post all of our webinars to our YouTube page. So you definitely want to check that out. And if you have any other questions, or if you guys wanted to see a demo of any of these systems, feel free to reach out to either of us here and we can get you set up with that. I think I have our contact information here. So if you guys did want to see this in action, feel free to reach out. We are putting together a video series for a virtual demo that we hope to have done here in the next couple of weeks, where we'll have those on our YouTube page, and it will kind of highlight all of the different features, as well as just kind of showing you the process of unboxing this, getting it in the air, and running the different missions.
So we appreciate you taking the time. That's going to be the end of our program, and be sure and look up our YouTube channel. We have quite a few other videos up there also, and then we look forward to talking with you.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.